And we're on. Welcome back to the Dad's Beer Club podcast. This week, I'm joined all the way from Houston, Texas by JL. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show today. Looking
No,
forward
no.
to it.
Appreciate you coming on. Just funny, you're the first American I've had on here, actually.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, but I'm making the trip over again on Sunday. so two have come around in 1 week.
Any travel restrictions with COVID or anything, or not necessarily?
No, 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 no.
Great, great. That's good to hear.
Um, So, look, JL, one of the things we always do on Dad's Beer Club first is just check what you're drinking for the evening. So,
Well, it's still kind of early stateside, and I've kind of picked up the kiddos, so I'm having hibiscus tea. They say it's good for my old man high blood pressure, so I've recently started drinking it. But I do have it in a bullet Kentucky whiskey glass, which
there we go.
there'll probably be whiskey in it later this evening.
Do you know, a couple of weeks ago, I had two lads from Australia,
Hmm.
and one of them I did. So for them, it was 6 o'clock in the morning. So
Hmm.
definitely no beer. And the other one I did quite late at night, but the other one I did in the morning, and he was later in the afternoon. And
Right.
again, 9 o'clock in the morning just isn't the right time to have a beer.
I will have to admit, though, during the initial early quarantines and lockdowns, there was some day drinking going on from time to time.
Are you guys out of lockdown over there, or what? What's going on?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Texas is reopened pretty much at 100% or at the business's discretion, if they want to stay scaled back because maybe they're a small shop or a small restaurant.
Yeah,
Um, some things still aren't open and they're just working on drive-throughs. We still have the mask mandates, which everybody seems to be adhering to for the most part.
yeah,
Um, but it's a lot of our bigger events still haven't come out. And you mentioned knowing a little bit about the area, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston is in the cities. It's a little more locked down. You get
yeah,
out to some of the smaller communities, and it's business as usual. In fact, back in October, when we were still very much in the midst of this thing, I went to an outlying county that has an annual festival every year, and they went ahead and had it, and it was 10,000 people. I mean, outdoors, right? But 10,000 people.
yeah.
All the neighboring restaurants were working at 100%. The restaurant I ate at had a 45-minute wait, and nobody had on masks. I mean, everybody was, um, oh, social distancing
Social
and
distance.
watching their
Yeah,
space and everything. But there was outdoor music and stages, so a lot of the younger people, I mean, they were right up in the mix of, in front of the stage and commingling and the great thing was there was no news that came out like 1,000 people got sick or anything. There was no news of any of that.
yeah,
So it was kind of odd. It
yeah.
was very 2019. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're still in full lockdown here. Literally, you
Mm.
can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. Um, I gave my little boy the options the other day. I said, "What do you want to do? We can either go to the park, go in the garden, or go to Sainsbury's, the supermarket."
Right.
it was that was it.
Not a lot, and it's still sort of like that here. I mean, because it's sorry, my um, there's no place to go, right? I mean, just the
Yeah,
essential trips still, and I mean, we can go shopping and whatnot, but it doesn't have the same feel good vibe that it used to have for me. You know what
yeah,
I mean? I mean, I don't know.
yeah,
But plenty
yeah.
of
It's
people out. I mean, this is a big city, so you get out on the Houston roadways, and it's like nothing ever changed. There's still thousands and thousands of people getting all around town.
Yeah, we had so we're in our third lockdown now. The first lockdown, the roads were completely empty. It was like a scene out of a movie. Like no one was out, traffic was completely gone. The last two, it's just like you say, it's just been completely normal.
I think I lost volume on my side. Can you still hear me? Okay.
I can hear you. Yeah,
Okay, you're a little muted. I might grab my headphones. Are you okay with that?
sure, no problem,
All right,
no
one
problem.
second. Just to make sure all the audio comes out good for you, or so I can hear you and answer questions appropriately, right? Yeah, I got you real good now. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, look, JL. So look, let's dive straight back in. One of the things we always do here is just go right back to the start. What was life like for you growing up? What was your relationship like with your dad? Was he about? What was that dynamic like?
So, and I'm glad you bring that up because I was actually thinking on that earlier today, and I had no idea you would ask, but it just, you get to be a certain age and you get a little older, get past 40 or something, you start thinking and reflecting on that stuff, right? And I'm 51 this year. So, child of the 70s, born in 1970. My parents divorced in 1980. I was 9 or 10 years old, 79, 80, they divorced.
Okay.
And he wasn't a bad guy, right? And he moved away, and he didn't move terribly far, 20 or 30 minutes across town. And he was always a shift worker, right? Worked third shift for many years. And then he married a new lady. That's what I guess instigated the divorce from my mother, right?
Yeah.
And she worked night shift as well. So they continued. He passed actually in 2007, but they continued to work night shift for many, many years. He just preferred it and enjoyed it. But we never saw him much. Like he would come around every Sunday, and I say we because I've got a brother as well. But we'd see him for a couple hours on Sunday, and that was it. Like we didn't go camping. He didn't take us to any sporting events. That I guess it just wasn't his thing, right? He always felt like he had to go to work or something, but I don't think really he worked that much. I think he and my stepmom, who was great as well. I mean, they had us over sometimes, but they just started a whole new life. Didn't have any additional kids. And geez, my phone's ringing off the hook. Sorry, I don't know how to stop that before the show started. So yeah, that was and he was engaged, right? Like he would engage with us to some extent. He would call, and we'd see him, like say, once a week, but there was never no vacationing or go stay with him for the summer or nothing like that. As I got older and could drive, I would go to his house more often. And I can remember, I always appreciated his honesty. When I moved to Texas, I was like, hey, you guys should come down some, it's really great. Because I was excited to be here. It was new, right? I'd always been in my hometown for 32 years before moving here. And he just told me, he said, hey, I don't fly, and your stepmother can't ride in a car that long because it's like a 17-hour drive. So he's like, we'll never be coming to Texas. I was like, wow. Well, thanks for your honesty, Dad. At least you didn't lie to me about it, right?
Yeah.
So then, expanding on that further, the thoughts I had this morning thinking over it is, so like I made a lot of friends, as most guys do, like when you're a young lad, like from 10 to 18 or something, right? And you got your school buddies and a little group you run around with. And looking back on it, I think all but just a few of them were from divorced families, right?
Yeah.
And so it was just normal for us, right? And instead of seeking or getting attention from our fathers, we had this clique of boys that we, good or bad, right? Sometimes we got in trouble, the mischief kind of stuff. But so yeah, there didn't, and I don't know if it was just that time of life or divorce was starting to get more rampant in the 80s.
Yeah.
But most of the guys, and maybe it's just a product of my environment, most of the guys I knew also had a father that was not in the home. So then bringing that forward, once I became a father, it was real important for me to stay involved and engaged.
Yeah.
And now even as a divorced father, I don't see them nearly as much as I did when I was in the household, but I made sure to stay close. I'm within 10 minutes of their mother's home, which was, the family home we shared. And I get them as often as I can, and sometimes even above what I'm supposed to be allotted, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm going too long, if that sort of answers your question, or
yeah. No. You mentioned that quite a lot of your friends that you were around with 10 to 18 were all going through a similar thing in terms of their fathers were splitting up with the mothers. But
yes.
Was it also fairly common that the dads weren't also involved, or was that sort of unique to you within your friends?
I think, and I come from a very very small town in the Midwest of the U.S. I always say Louisville, Kentucky, but I was in the Louisville metro area, and my original birthplace was a town called New Albany, Indiana, right across the river from Louisville, Kentucky, a town of about 30,000 people.
Okay.
So a lot of dads, as I remember from that time, I mean, they were working class guys, right? They either worked in construction or at a truck plant or some kind of fabrication shop. Um, I remember one of my dad's friends really stands out. It's probably kind of a great topic for a beer show, and he worked for the Ford truck plant, right? And he was a hardworking guy and worked there for many years, but he was also a veteran and a heavy drinker. So one day, 4, 5, 6 of us boys are hanging out at my friend's house, and his dad comes in, sits down with us, has a beer, lectures us about not drinking and driving, gets in his car and leaves. So, it was kind of a different time. I mean, the 80s were maybe a little more rowdy, right? Like rowdy from not a personal sense, from a society sense, right? Like we didn't have, I don't think people were wearing seatbelts yet, the technology wasn't a thing yet. It was still kind of old school Wild West in a way of life and upbringing, right? You scraped your knee, your dad told you to walk it off, you didn't get coddled like, do you need therapy for that? I played youth football. You mentioned football before the show. I played youth football, and 2 of our best players got in a fight one day during practice. And the coach didn't break it up. He watched it for a while, and then we were in full gear. They had helmets on. It wasn't really just tossing around, but the coach was like, hey, wait a minute. I can't see. And he watched it. And of course they would never probably really do that nowadays. Right. And,
the coach would get sacked.
The coach would get sued, and some mom would be upset. It'd be blasted all over the internet. And, So I'm appreciative of that time. It was a little different. It was a little tough being. We were all sort of poor, but didn't know we were poor. You know what I mean? Not so poor we went to bed hungry, but we didn't live in the fanciest of neighborhoods and have everything handed to us. Which I'm glad. I'm glad it taught me a lot of lessons.
Yeah. And obviously, you mentioned your mum and dad broke up when you were about 9 or 10. Mm-hmm. Was there ever a stepdad that came into the equation?
There was not. There was not. And my mom she's still around. She's single to this day. I mean, she dated some, and there was a guy that was around for a while, but she never really brought men into the house.
Okay.
And probably looking back on it, I'm glad for that, because, and I don't want to take the stories off topic, but just a personal reflection. When I became divorced, right, after a 20-year marriage, I didn't know I'd been married so long, I didn't know what the single scene was, and I started meeting single gals almost right away. And I tell this to be a funny story, but the first gal I met was her son went to school with my son, and we met actually on a school field trip. So I thought, okay, it's okay to introduce the kids to each other because they already know each other, right?
Yeah.
But I realized it was a mistake after doing that twice to get the kids involved too early on in a new relationship, right? So now I still, I'm living the bachelor life. I try to date kind of casually and set proper boundaries that, hey, I'm living the bachelor life, but I don't introduce the kids anymore.
No.
And to come back to where your question was, I'm glad that my mother didn't bring a lot of guys around that might have not stayed or not had my best intentions in heart.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've got a couple of friends actually that have broken up with their partners who they have kids with, and almost instantly there are new men in the house. One friend has been broke up not even a year, and I think there's been 4 people been introduced to the kids at that point. It's just you need to set that boundary to say that's just going to mess with the children, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And I only learned this myself, I think maybe last year, and I wish I'd have heard this when I became divorced. But someone said, actually, to give a plug, if you don't mind, to another podcast I was
Of
on. It
course.
was called Single After 40, and that's where I learned this from. It was actually just a month or two ago. But one of the commenters said for every year you were married, you should spend at least 1 month single. So if you're like me, married 20 years, I should have spent 20 months trying to figure myself out.
Yeah.
But I didn't right away, right? I was like, not to tell a bad joke, but you keep a dog caged up for 20 years and let him loose, I mean, what's he going to do, right?
Yeah.
So, after a few, and not bad experiences, but a few short-lived dating experiences, 6, 8 months, a year, I think one gal, now I'm sort of like, hey, I don't want all that right now. I'm okay with being myself.
Yeah. No, you mentioned you got a brother as well. Is it just the two of you?
Yeah, so I come from a really small family. So mom and dad, and dad didn't have any brothers or sisters, so no aunts or uncles on that side.
Okay.
Mom had one sister, and she only had one child, so I don't have a lot of cousins or aunts or uncles. My brother is actually still in my hometown. He's 9 years younger. So that was a big gap when we were kids, right? Like I'm 18 and he's 9 or something. But now that we're adults, our relationship's probably better than it's ever been. And we can relate better with each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, so really small family. And then we moved to Texas for a job reload opportunity I had back in 2002. And have stayed ever since, the company I was with eventually went to the East Coast after 5 or 6 years I was with them. And we chose, we'd already bought a house in Houston. My oldest daughter was in school in Houston, so we chose not to move again.
Yeah.
And have just kind of stayed. I mean, I enjoy, I live in the suburbs, but I enjoy having a bigger city nearby that I can go into for arts and entertainment and museums. And though I do, well, before COVID, I was traveling back home quite a bit, but and it was relaxing because it's a slower pace, but at the same time, it's like now I'm more accustomed to just the vibe of a city, I guess, the sort of the hum, the noise, right?
Yeah. So I'm a sort of similar background, really, in as much as I'm from a small town here in England.
Mm-hmm.
I think the population of the place I was from is also about 30,000 people, so relatively small. I moved to Manchester, which is obviously a much bigger city,
Right.
and I've sort of took a step away again now into the what you would call the suburbs, I guess, where I live in a very small town, probably 15, 20,000 people, but Manchester isn't much of a stone throw away. So if I do want to go back into that city for like you say, the arts and sport and all that and nightlife, you can. But I also get to take the dog down the river and take the dog on nice walks and take the kids. So it's nice to have it there, but not live in it full time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure it's probably the same in most major metropolitan areas, but if you live in the city, the schools aren't always as good as they sometimes are in the suburbs, right? And Houston, I don't know if other places are like this, or it's just a Texas thing, or maybe I just wasn't aware of it in my home state, but the schools are all ranked, right? And they have different rankings about, I don't even know what they call it. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but people will live in certain parts of the metropolitan area based on those school district rankings, because they want to be in a good district for their kiddos, And sometimes it may cost a little more to live there, or maybe that area ranks okay and it is a little more moderately priced. But, if you're right in the heart of the city, maybe the school's not as great or not as safe, So, I don't know. Houston's a real mix of a little bit of everything.
Yeah. But it's like you said before, it's a melting pot, isn't it? Everybody, with the oil and gas industry, everybody just comes in from everywhere, and it's a collective of lots of different thoughts and ideas and ways of living.
Oh, very much so. And one of the questions we all ask each other is like, hey, are you a native Houstonian or are you a native Texan? And it's almost a rarity to find somebody that says, "Yeah, I've been here my whole life." You're right. It's, somebody's from here or from there, or they're like, "Yeah, I'm a native Texan, but I'm not native to Houston." And and I can remember when I got here, the mayor at the time, I don't remember I think it was Mayor Brown. It's not relevant, but in his inauguration speech when he was elected, he said Houston is a working city and people come here to work. And I thought that was, and that was 20 years ago, but I've always remembered that because I thought it was such a great
Yeah.
testament of what embodies Houston.
Yeah. And remains so today.
No, very much, very much. And not to shift gears, but I was just having this conversation yesterday. Real estate's what I do, is my gig, but they recently released or reported that Houston has more housing starts than anywhere in the nation right now. I don't know where the people are coming from. It's just crazy. Well, right now they're coming across our southern border, but that's sorry, didn't mean to make it political, but
no, it's fine. Keep going. I know. I listen to quite a lot of obviously Joe Rogan's podcast, and obviously he talks about the flight from California to Texas.
Yeah.
Because taxes are a lot lower in Texas as well, aren't they?
Yeah, well, so we don't have any state income tax.
Wow.
Now, what they do get us on is property tax, right?
Yeah.
Like but property tax is also tax deductible when you do your federal filings, right? So, the difference is sort of the wages stay the same, right? Like Houston can be a little more expensive, but we got the same wages as, say, a smaller city like St. Louis or Louisville, Kentucky, for hourly workers, right? Now, if you've got a really good job in oil and gas or something like that, then yeah, it's probably going to pay more than other cities in America. But our real estate prices are up tremendously. Our rent prices are up tremendously. And I think it's just a sign of the times. They're probably going up everywhere. You know what I mean?
I use because, like I mentioned before, my aim is to move to Texas, and my friend is who lives in Houston is always like, come to Houston. It's only a 4-hour drive to Dallas if you want to go to one of the games or do that. So I always get notifications when some nice properties. I use is it Zillow? I think it's Zillow, isn't it? That you guys use.
Uh-huh.
So I use that, and I get notifications of when some pretty nice property come on the market over there. But you know what? I'm always amazed at the price of houses over there compared to here is.
Oh, I'm
honestly,
sure it's probably much better here, right? I mean, it's real estate. Yeah.
Yeah.
The one point in it, I don't know how you feel Dallas to Houston, but the great thing about Houston to me is we've got the coast, right? So we don't seem landlocked. Dallas to me seems sort of landlocked because any direction you go, you're just driving out into the countryside.
Yeah.
So that's, and the coast here isn't all that amazing. It's not like California or Miami or anything, but it's still
a coast.
Still a coast, right? So that's the one tidbit I would throw into that conversation. But so yeah, please, another question.
Yeah, no. So your ex-partner who you got your children with, when did you meet her?
Oh wow, I was 95, 96.
Okay.
We actually worked together. Like I worked a full-time job and I worked a part-time job in a pet store, and she also worked in that pet store. And here's the crazy story for full transparency. So she just worked part-time because she was married. They relocated to the Louisville area for his job from Northern Ohio. And I was engaged to my high school sweetheart, but she worked 2 jobs herself. So at that point, me and my now ex-wife, we spent a lot of time together, right? We worked together, so we were seeing each other 4, 5, 6 days a week. We both had free time outside of work sometimes where our current partners weren't available, so we'd go get coffee or something, go hang out, and because we were young and dumb, right? And at some point, I don't know when it happened, looking back on, at some point boundaries got crossed, and we became a thing, right? And we both broke off our other relationships and got married, and it was good for a long time. But I'd ran into a pastor a couple years back that had been a church we attended here in Houston, and we were catching up. Hadn't seen him in a few years. He's asking me how I've been, and I said, "Hey, well, I'm going through this divorce, or I just went through this divorce." And he said to me, and I thought it was really wise. And he said, "The funny thing about a divorce is they start years before you actually get to court, right? Like
Mm.
the marriage is on a gradual decline, and if you can't fix it, you just fall off that cliff, right?" And I thought, well, it's a great way to look at it. It kind of sucks, but it's a great way to look at it. So,
It is, but
but
I think a lot of people ignore those signs as well, because sometimes when you look back and you reflect, the you reflecting on it, you
mm.
see those alarm bells ringing. But when you're
Oh
in
yeah,
it
yeah.
in the moment, it's easy to
And
ignore.
we tried. We had some counseling a couple different times, and it just, in hindsight, could we have both done different things? Possibly, but I'm also a firm believer in, life's going to be what it's going to be, right?
Yeah,
Like, people come in and out of your life, and sometimes you don't want them to, but that it just has to happen, and God sends you on your way, or whatever
that's
your
it.
higher power belief is.
Yeah. So, how long were you together before you had your first?
Uh, Not long, to be honest with you. A year and a half, maybe.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, it
and
wasn't. Well, a year and a half when she got pregnant, and then,
yeah,
of course, the pregnancy was 9 months or whatever. So about 2 years before she was
okay.
born.
Because obviously, like you mentioned, you're from a relatively small family.
Hmm.
Was kids something you always wanted to have? Did you always want to have a family?
Yeah, and I just, oddly enough, my oldest had a birthday. So one of the things I've done for her was I wrote a letter to her. And I think I always just wanted to be dad, right? Like I wasn't real like hyper focused on my career. Like I'm going to be a rocket scientist or an engineer. I just wanted to be dad, right? I wanted to be home, like fixing stuff on the house, helping with the dishes, reading stories. And in fact, that's how we came about having additional children, because we go back to mentioning that small family. So when my oldest was about 10 or 11, and plus now at this point, we're getting older as well, right? I'm like, hey, we're from small families. She's going to be from a small family. She's not going to have any siblings once we expire, you know. Um, so then I guess maybe that's how it works for a lot of people. It's hard to plan that first birth, right? Maybe sometimes
Yeah,
it just happens, or especially when you're young and fertile, right? And then so the second one, my son, we talked about it. We planned that, and it was like, okay, we agreed to have another child. And then the third one, 2 years later, was sort of like a bonus baby, right? Because we hadn't really planned that one. Um, but thank goodness we did, right? Because now the two young ones have each other.
yeah.
They love each other to death. They're really good brother and sister. And then the older sister's really good to them as well. And as she gets older and they age up into teenage young adult years, she's going to have some siblings, and um, hopefully it all works out. It's been really good so far. I mean, other than the divorce, which is an ugly thing about marriage, right? And
Yeah.
um, but we've been blessed with no real illnesses or accidents or abnormities or anything like that.
So, just listening to what you were saying there, the first one wasn't planned. Was that a shock?
No, no, the first one. It was a shock, and I was thinking of that the other day as well when I was writing my daughter this letter. It was sort of trying to explain the memory, but
How old are you at this point as well?
I'm 51,
No,
so I was.
yeah.
Oh, when we determined she was pregnant, she was 20. I was 27.
Okay.
She was 25. And she didn't tell me she was pregnant, right? Like, not at first. And I reached back one day, we're walking somewhere, like at a shop or a park or something. I don't remember exactly. And I reached back to get her hand, and I didn't get her hand. I got her stomach. And she wasn't big, she wasn't showing, but when I touched her stomach, it just felt a little different, right? And I was like, when are we having a baby? She said, I don't know. And then, like that next week, we got a I don't know if it was that day or the next week, whatever, we got the pregnancy test, and then she was having a baby. And we were like, okay, time to, but, and I think society's a little different now. Like younger people, like my daughter's 24 now, almost the age I was when we had her.
Yeah.
and kids are waiting now. They're focusing on their career.
Yeah.
In the '90s, and it doesn't even seem that long ago to me, but the '90s was like 30 years ago now, right? And we weren't doing anything bad, but we were just enjoying life. We were having sex, we were going to concerts and um, just enjoying being sort of, I want to use the word young kids, but 27 and 25 is not really a kid either,
No.
but it's not really a full blown adult either, for me, looking back on it. Like, I thought I was an adult at 27, but hell, I'm not even an adult now at 51. I don't know what the hell's going on. So, and and again, come from a smaller town, America. I mean, I don't know how it is in England by any means, but I mean, a lot of people got pregnant early years ago, right? Like, hell, guys 18, 19 years old becoming dads.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe that still happens some. I've not checked the stats on any of that, but that's way too young
Yeah.
for all that responsibility, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We, with I think our two countries are very aligned. I think
Mm-hmm.
we're very similar cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Although we do have quite significant differences in that in our approach to. I think culturally we're very similar, and
Mm-hmm.
how you just described growing up in America, where young people had children early and now they're having them a lot. It's the same. It's exactly the same here. It used to be kids, kids 19, 18, 19, 20, kids having kids. That's what it was.
Oh,
And
absolutely, yeah.
but very much now it's people over 30 are starting to have children. I think,
Mm-hmm.
like you say, having a career. But also, I think what plays into that is, but again, maybe 20 years ago, it was much easier to buy a house, whereas now
Yeah, yeah,
people
absolutely.
people really struggle to buy a house over here.
Yeah. Well, and my 24-year-old still lives at home with her mother. She's studying nursing, works at a local hospital, and she's had a couple long-term boyfriends. And the last one she basically broke up with him because he was complaining about her career. He's like, you're studying all the time, and I guess, and I'm glad, like, she's got some ambition. She wants to get
Yeah,
her career locked down before she worries about locking down with some dude. And maybe it's because we didn't have technology in the '80s and '90s, right? I mean, my world was sort of my hometown, right?
yeah,
Like, I'd traveled some, I'd been to other cities throughout the region, I'd been to Chicago and New York, but my world was kind of small.
yeah.
Um, and the people in it were sort of the people I thought would always be in it, right? Um, and I don't know. Then after moving to Texas, it sort of opened up. I had additional career opportunities. The internet's obviously changed things for everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
look at us talking right now. 30 years ago, I'd have been sending you a postcard from Texas. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah,
And so yeah, hopefully kids are smarter now,
yeah.
or have more opportunity to make different decisions.
I was just going to say it's opportunity. I think
Mhm.
they're definitely not smarter.
Well, that's true.
It's definitely opportunity. There is, like you say, previously you'd have looked at your hometown and your sphere of influence was pretty
Mhm.
small,
Right.
whereas now, like last week, I'm speaking to somebody in Melbourne, Australia. This week, I'm speaking to you in Houston, Texas.
Mhm.
Like you say, these things were just not even an option. And even growing up, traveling out of the UK to go on a family holiday to Spain or Italy or wherever, it just didn't happen. Whereas
Right.
now, people are going on 2 or 3 holidays a year. It's the world is the oyster.
Yeah. Well, and in my experience coming up, being in the Louisville area, like Cincinnati, Ohio was an hour and a half up the road. And it was sort of unheard of, right? It's like, maybe you went up there for a game or something, but that was a long way to go. You didn't really do that. Now in Houston, it takes me a half hour and a half to get to the market, and it's right down the street. It's just, and that's, I'm being facetious, but if you drive across the city of Houston, it could take you an hour and a half to get to some place within the same town.
Yeah.
And So for me, and I can't speak for everybody that makes those changes, but it opens you up from that small town worldview where,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I couldn't go to Indianapolis because it was a 2 hour drive, but now I've got to drive 2 hours to go show a house or something.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know.
That what you said there is just up the street reminds me of a story when I first went to Texas, and like I mentioned, my friends married a Texan girl.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, all the lads from England came over, and we got picked up at the airport. I never forget it. It was this a girl called Brittany, so she was driving our car, and I got in the car after a 10 or 12 hour journey. The last thing I wanted to do would be cooped up in a car for another hour and a half.
Right.
And got in the car and I said to her, how far have we got to drive? And she went, oh, it's just up the road, just up the street, she said.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, yeah, cool. 40 minutes later, I said, Brittany, you said it was just up the street. She went, no, it is. Yeah, it's not far. And I was like, look, I said, in 40 minutes, we're going to a different city in England.
That is how we measure time here. We don't say it's 20 miles. It's either like 20 minutes or that's a 30-minute drive, or it's right up the road and it's really 20, 30 minutes to get over into the next little shopping district or something. But yeah, I'm spoiled because the first 5 or 6 years I was here, I did work for a company and I had to commute, but it was fairly close to home where we officed at. And now I've been self-employed since that time. So I get to choose when I want to commute, right? I don't have to get up at 7 a.m. and get right into morning traffic. If I did, I think I'd probably have a heart attack, right? I mean, that's not that driving bothers me. I enjoy driving, but I don't want to be in that mess of bumper to bumper to try to get to some cubicle at some downtown office building that I don't even want to be in anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And do you know what? I think that one of the if you can take anything good from the coronavirus pandemic, especially over here, I don't know about over there, but the idea of working from home for a lot of these office workers before 2020 was out of the question. Whereas now it's become so normal, and actually companies have realized that people can work from home. People don't need to have a 2-hour commute in and out of work every single day.
Well, but it's going to make things weird. And I didn't mean to interject, but I was just reading this yesterday. This is going to be relevant for you whether you choose Houston or Dallas, because I hear Dallas has one as well. I've not been in it. Houston has an underground tunnel system that connects 95 city blocks. So all those office workers, because it gets hot in Texas, right? So all those office workers would travel from building to building underground. And it's not a subway. It's just walkable tunnels. And there's restaurants and there's shops and there's all this stuff. Prior to the pandemic, you go down there and there's thousands of people and all the shops open.
Yeah.
Now there's like 100 people and 90% of the shops are closed. So yes, we are seeing that change, and it is cool that everybody can sort of work remotely. But what's going to happen to all that space, right? And all those jobs that used to be created because of that traffic, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. We're sort of in uncharted waters, right? I mean, what the other side of this thing looks like.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I started my own business in February last year, and then the world went into lockdown in March.
Yeah, great timing, right? Yeah, great timing. I get it.
We survived it, and we're looking to have a good year this year. But I was speaking to Sky TV here, so it's like our biggest cable provider,
right?
And I was just talking to one of the lads that was working on the phone, and he was saying that they're being told now forever they never have to go back to the office.
Really? Wow.
100% work from home. So all these office spaces, these big, juicy offices that people pay hundreds of £1,000s a year for, not needed anymore.
They're going to not be needed, right? Will they be reconverted? Will they get bought up by somebody else? I mean, that's a lot of the conversations I'm hearing stateside right now, because I'm in the real estate space. But, what's going to become of all this? A company that maybe once needed 25,000 square feet can now shrink it down to 2,500 square feet and let the remote workers do their thing. I'm kind of torn. Like, I was always anti-Amazon for the longest time, just because I want to shop and support local merchants, and I like to see what I'm purchasing. And I still held off through the pandemic until we got to Christmas. And now it's like every 2 or 3 days I'm picking up packages, right? It's like I'm just ordering everything. I'm like, oh, I can get that. I can get that.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was in, I don't know if you have them in England, but like a lumber store, it's called Lowe's here, like Home Depot and Lowe's, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was asking for a particular item, and the kid told me I had to go online to get it. I could have just stayed home then, right? You know,
Yeah, yeah. The whole drive to online has been expedited by this last year for sure.
well, for sure, for sure. And I don't know that I like that a lot, right? I mean, I get it, you know, but at the same time, all the small shops that sometimes have better service and more quality items, you know, they're becoming a thing of the past almost. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So just going back to your children, did you find out what you were having, or did you wait to find out?
Gee, it's been so long. I think we found out each time. I will
Okay.
tell you this. So funny story. So we'll bring it back to the children. So when my first was born, like I said, I was 27 years old. I had long hair. I was a long hair hippie kid. You know, that was just my vibe. I worked in craft bars and the pet store and all that stuff when we were young. And she's about to have this baby, right? And I'm freaking out. Like not like in a bad way, but the nurses can tell I'm obviously like scared to death, right?
Yeah.
And the two nurses look at me, and the one nurse says, "Hey, do you want me to get you a Valium?" I was like, "Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah." She just laughed and she said, "No, I can't do that," and left me there just to miserably fall apart, waiting for this first child to be born. And then she asked me after the child was born, she had me go buy her a meatball sandwich at Subway at 12 o'clock at night. Which, um, so 3 children, and I've never seen any of them be born, which is kind of weird for most dads. Like I was there every time, but I didn't want to
Yeah.
watch the process, right? Like
No.
I didn't really want to see that.
Yeah.
uh, so I didn't. But yeah, I think we always wanted to know the sex so we could sort of prepare, right? You gotta. I guess I'm seeing a lot nowadays. People want to do these reveal parties, and it's a boy, or it's a girl. You know, we wanted to know up front, so you know, hey, do I need to get boy clothes or girl clothes? You know, and
Yeah.
am I painting this room, or what color's the crib going to be? And um, especially on number 2 and number 3, right? You know, I wanted to be as prepared as possible.
Yeah. And I genuinely have no idea how people wait. Like we paid to have this early scan for early reveal for
Mm-hmm.
our boy. But yeah, we've got friends actually that are having children now, and they're just gonna wait. I'm like, you're crazy.
Well, I guess maybe if you pick out 2 sets of names, right, and you already have a boy name ready and a girl name ready, then you can just. But yeah, and it's been so long for me. Like my youngest is, I'm almost like grandpa dad, right? I mean, she's 10, but so it's been 10 years minimum. I mean, she'll be 11 this year in a few months. So it's been that long since I've experienced an actual baby, right? Um, I saw one the other day. It was almost like weird, right? I was like, oh my God, what is that little bitty thing? um, but no, it's great. I mean, going back to where we sort of started, I mean, I think I always wanted to be a dad, and I've tried to stay involved. I mean, we did the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. Um, COVID's made it kind of weird. I mean, I still get my visitation, all that, but we've been limited to where we can go for fun.
Yeah.
So weird story relating to that. Just last weekend, I took them out for it's this big place called Incredible Pizza. You know, they have this pizza buffet and video games and indoor go-karts and all that, right? So I bought the full package, but since it's COVID, you can't get your own pizza from the buffet anymore, right? You have to stand in line and they put it on the plate and then hand you the plate. Okay, fair enough. But you are allowed to go get your own drink or your own ice cream.
Okay.
And then you're allowed to go in there with hundreds of other kids and everybody's touching the surfaces and stuff, you know, and I don't know. And it's a big place, right? Like they said they were working at reduced capacity, but reduced capacity meant they could still have 1,500 people in the building.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, and it was pretty full. Um, so I don't
And
know.
and was the pizza incredible?
No, it's terrible. You know, it's buffet food, and the surprising thing is, and you know how kids can be, right? And of course, I didn't give him any flack about it, but my son literally ate two pieces of pizza and one drink. I'm like, dude, it cost me $150 to get us in here. You need to eat like 20 pieces of pizza. Yeah.
Fill your pockets.
Yeah, so and most of what I spent was for the game. There's a nominal admission for the food buffet, but you got to buy the buffet to get in, right? So, um, but it's good. I mean, my point to all that is things are starting to open back up, and some of the
Yeah.
regulations are starting to get a little bit lax. They went with their mother a weekend or so ago to a place called Kima, which is down on the Galveston Bay, and it's an outdoor amusement boardwalk thing with outdoor rides, and um, so that was nice. They were able to do that. I didn't realize that place was back open again. Um, um, I don't know what else I got for you. Got another question? Open this up.
No, I was going to say, do you think how you described how your dad was growing up? Do you think about being quite distant and not as involved and not going to concerts and all that sort of stuff? Do you think that shaped you becoming a parent because you experienced what you didn't want?
Yes and no, but and like I say, and he wasn't a bad guy, and
No.
I remember like he was always there with words of wisdom, but it was more like by phone. He didn't spend that actual lot of time engaged. But I've always said this, right? Like about dads. Like, and I know a ton of guys that hunt, right? And I'm not opposed to hunting, but I don't hunt. I've never I've went on a hunt, but I didn't even have a gun, right? I just went with my mates. But so like grandfather has guns and hunts, and he teaches dads how to hunt or fish, and then dad teaches his sons, right? Like we
Yeah.
pass these things down. My dad taught me how to play guitar. Like I've got my dad's old Led Zeppelin records right back here behind me. So he imparted some things in me that I'm about that I really enjoy now. And he was involved before they divorced, right? Like I remember him being a scout dad, and we made the Pinewood Derby cars and all that. But as I was growing up, he wasn't real involved.
Okay.
And yeah, so maybe I now almost to the point of overcompensating, right? Like I want to be involved, and then becoming a divorced dad. A lot of divorced dads end up either somewhere else, or they've just walked away from it and they're not involved at
Yeah.
all, or their exes. They've had a bitter breakup, so she's not allowing them to see the kids very much, and it's
Yeah.
just ugly. Um, we've sort of avoided all that, and I see them. I'd say quite often. Not as much as I would like, but as much as I can, and we're always kind of well. And I don't overcompensate by saying we're always doing something, like because you don't want to be a Disneyland dad either, right? It's like, oh
No.
hey, it's Dad's weekend, let's go. Let's go to the strip clubs. Woohoo! We don't do anything. Some days it's just good to stay home and cook them a meal and stuff like that, and be engaged at that level. Um, Going back to where your question started, so when my mother and father divorced, I never stayed another night with him. He never had us come over for a sleepover, for a weekend sleepover, for a day. And I always found that odd, right? Like I want
Yeah.
my kids to be sleeping over as much as possible. Um, but again, it was sort of a different time, right? A different time
Yeah.
in the world, maybe. Um,
You mentioned your brother, who is, I think you said 9 years younger than
mhm.
you. Did you say he's still back home? So did he have a relationship still with your dad growing up?
Yeah, and was probably a little closer. Well, and that may have been my own mistake, right? So I moved here in '02. My father died in '07. So those last few years, my brother was probably more engaged with my dad than I was.
Okay.
I went up a couple times when he was sick, and it conveyed to my stepmom. I said, "Hey, if he worsens, I want to know so I can come home." Well, nobody told me, so I wasn't there when he passed. Um, so yeah, my brother was probably they had a better relationship later on in life.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to think where it transitioned because, I got married fairly early, and my brother, at 27, my brother was still just like 18 or something, right? So he probably had more time, more adult time with dad than I did, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, but but still, I don't think they really ever got together and did anything, right? Not like I don't know. They may have. My brother'd have to answer that, because I know I went over some. He had a woodworking shop and a big garage, and we made some speaker boxes and stuff like that. So I'm sure my brother did some things like that with him as well.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll say we're nearly at the end. We're going to wrap up in a second, but
Sure.
just want to touch on because I know a lot of people go through this when the divorce and the decision to actually leave the family home.
Mhm.
How was that? Like how did the thought of obviously you go from well not the thought of that actually. How did you adapt to being in a situation where you're seeing your children every day and then to a situation where you're not? Like how did you adapt to that?
So that's a great question and a great story to wrap up on because I can bring some real points and hopefully some funny points as well. But that was the hardest thing ever for me as an adult man, right? Because we had been married so long, we had lived in that same house for 14, 15 years, right? Um, and being in real estate, I've seen it, right? Like you go show a house and half the stuff's gone, only one person's clothes are in the closet. Something's up, right? Because, and again, just my experience or my opinion, a lot of times when a couple breaks up, the dude just bounces, right? He's like, hey, screw that. He packs a bag. He's crashing on a buddy's couch.
Yeah,
And I told her, I said, I'm not going to do that, right? We've been married so long. I've been so engaged in these kids' lives. So our decision was, I don't know if it's good or bad or if it's for me or for the kids, but we lived separately in the house and started trading weekends. And this was to avoid each other, right? Like, okay, it's your weekend with the kids. I'm going to stay gone so you guys can do whatever, or you guys can stay gone. And we did that for 3 or 4 months. And it was like living in an igloo, right? Like just super tense. We're avoiding each other. I'm slowly, and she was demanding that she eventually wanted me out. And I said, we've been married so long and we've been a family so long. I deserve to be able to establish a residence so the kids can come and visit me. Right. And I said, once I get an apartment, I'll go. And it takes a while. Sometimes there's immediate availability. Sometimes they'll say, hey, it's available on the 20th or whatever. And I remember to this day, I think it was October 21st, they said they were going to have my apartment ready. So I spoke with her. I said, okay, the kids are going to be in school. You're going to be at work. I'm going to get a moving truck. And, well, let me back up the story and kind of set it out. When we were originally going to split, I wasn't going to take anything, right? Like I didn't want to take half the furniture or I didn't want to disrupt the family home as much as possible,
yeah,
right? But as we got further down the road, as to me moving out, I was like, well, dad deserves some things, right? And the kids are going to see the same possessions in dad's house. And so I didn't fight for much, but there was a few things like my great grandmother's steamer trunk, of course, all my personal belongings, clothing, that kind of stuff, some dishes that were my other grandmother's, weird things like that. But I didn't disrupt the home too much. But so on that particular day, I said, hey, if you'll pick the kids up from school after work, keep them out to about 5 or 6 o'clock, I'll pack up and get out of here. Well, leading up to that, of course, the kids at that time were like 5 and 7, right? So I'm trying to have that talk, hey, dad's not going to be living here anymore. And I was slowly packing what belongings I was going to move out with into the garage. Because as you can imagine, I mean, we've been married 20 years. We were in that house for 15. I mean, I had stuff in the attic, right, that was personal to me. So I'm slowly up to the moving date, moving all this stuff out in the garage and spending my time with the kids. And on that day, I remember I got all my stuff, and I even one of the things I wanted was the bedroom set, right? Like I deserve to have a damn bed. If we're going to divorce, I need to have a damn bed, right? But I wasn't really an asshole about it, right? Like after I cleaned out the bedroom, we had hardwood flooring in there, and when you move, like there's always dust and dirt and all that move out. So I mopped and everything, right, bro? Like I did it the best I could without just storming out and throwing my stuff in the
Yeah.
truck and leaving a mess. So then to wrap that forward, to see, how did it feel to go? I mean, we were a family of 5 with 2 dogs and a cat, so there was always noise. I wake up the next day and I'm in a 1-bedroom apartment. And I remember that one particular Sunday, like the first Sunday after I moved, I just thought, I'm not going to call anybody. I'm not going to get on the internet. I'm not going to be on social media. I'm not going to turn the TV on. I'm just going to sit with myself, right? The silence was near deafening, right? I mean, it was a bad day. Like, and I didn't drink or like get all the time. I just was trying to deal with the new normal. So, and here's a funny story, and I'll wrap up with this. So, I lived half mile from a neighborhood store, a little pharmacy. And I'm not much for cereal, like cold cereal, like cornflakes or that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But that particular day, I decided I wanted some cereal. So I grabbed a little backpack, and I walked up, and I'm for exercise, right? Get out and get moving around. So I walk up to the store to buy some cereal, some milk. Well, I get back to my new apartment. I didn't have any bowls or spoons because I didn't think ahead, right? And I didn't
Yeah.
split that kind of stuff up from the family. So I ended up eating a bowl of cereal in a red Solo cup with a plastic fork. But I made it through, right? I mean,
Yeah.
now I have everything I need. I've been reestablished for, quite a few years now. It seems like the kids have everything they need. But you kind of find out who your friends are when you're going through that. I had a
Yeah.
coworker just call me randomly, and she was like, "Hey man, I'm at Walmart. Do you have silverware? They got this silverware tray. It's got all the pieces you need." And I'm like, "Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just ate cereal with a fork. Yes, I need that." So
Yeah.
slowly things started to come together, and now
Yeah.
it's single dad life.
Yeah. But it's I've talked about this a lot with a lot of guys, and you know, over here especially, when you're younger, you've got a bounty full of friends, right? There's loads of them, and then as you get older,
Mm-hmm.
the friend pool starts to shrink and shrink, and then when you have kids, it becomes even smaller, right?
Yeah, that's
And
right.
then what a lot of people do is they completely shut themselves off from their friends, and people that they've grown up with for a long time. So then what happens is when people get into a situation like found yourself in, where
Mm-hmm.
you've gone into your house, you've got no cutlery, and then you have no friends because you've shut people off for such a long time, and you can soon see why some people, some men in that situation, really struggle to
Mm-hmm.
adapt, and then mental health starts to become a problem because
Oh,
their
absolutely.
world has gone from this to this. So
Well,
it's
and I
really,
still deal with that because, I feel like I know a ton of people and I have probably hundreds of people I call friends, but really they're friends on a professional sense, right? They're professional
yeah,
peers. And could I call them if I was in a pinch? Probably absolutely. But what has sort of happened when you're that married guy, well, you have all these people in your life, in your career, in your job, and then you go home to your family at night,
yeah,
right? You're not really running with your buddies and that stuff. And now that I found myself I became single at 46. I'm 51 now, but a lot of my friends are still married, right? So I might see them professionally during the day, not so much during COVID, right? But might see them during the
yeah,
day, but then they go home to their family. We're not out running around hitting the pub or, and exactly like you say, some guys go the other way. They start going to the bar too much,
yeah.
and that maybe gets them in different trouble or different arrangements they shouldn't be in. And, so yeah, I've taken a real inventory probably the past, well, because of COVID, right? It's like being okay with, I don't want to use the term being alone, but being
Alone with your thoughts.
being alone with your thoughts and not beating yourself up about it, all
Yeah,
that stuff. I mean, because prior to COVID, I mean, being in real estate, we always had networking events or training opportunities. Well, all that's pretty much ceased, or
yeah,
it's went to Zoom, right?
yeah. Not the
Which
same.
worked. It's not really the same, right? So, but I don't know. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. So hopes for the future. What do the next few years have in store for you, Joe?
So, I rent currently. I'm in an apartment, which I don't hate. And because when my parents divorced in '80, we lived in apartments for many years. My mother never bought a house again. Um, but I would like to buy, I don't know if I want another single family home. I want to get into real estate investing.
Mhm.
So I would like to possibly buy a smaller multifamily unit, like 3 to 5 units, live in one and rent out the others.
Yeah.
Um, I told myself, and it was kind of a life hack for me, but right before COVID happened in 2019, I turned 49. I don't know if it was a midlife crisis or what, but I told myself I was retired, right? Like I still kind of earn money, I still have bills, but I feel like I took myself off that rat race, off that wheel, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it was just a little mind change for me. But so at 51, I'm probably too early to be thinking about it. But I'm thinking about how can I not be in the corporate grind?
Yeah.
How can I grow my business and still make money and maybe even make more money than I have in the past without that corporate grind? And it sort of comes back to some of the things you were saying, right? I mean, all the remote working and people not going into the office, and um, I think a lot of us are going to have to pivot. Even if we stay in the same line of work, it's kind of pivoting from what it was, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I'm just looking at enjoying I don't know, the second half of life, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you a sports fan?
A little bit, but I don't follow it by like I don't know players and stats and all that.
No.
I used to enjoy going to the events are much better when you can go to the stadium, right?
Yeah.
Um, for me, they were. Um, and I'm a hometown guy. Like my hometown didn't have professional sports teams, and now Houston does. Um, so even when they suck, I'm sort of a fan just because you know we got teams here. But yeah, I like to go and do the experience. I don't watch a lot through the season. I do tend to follow some. My son's a big sports fan, and he does follow stats and players and stuff. So I've kind of stay a little engaged in order to connect with
Yeah.
him on that. Um, but yes and no. I mean, and sports are huge, and you mentioned the Cowboys, so sports
Both.
are huge in Texas and in Houston and
Yeah.
Dallas. I mean, they decorate their cars and their houses, right? They do.
Yeah.
I I seen a truck on the internet just the other day that had all the Dallas Cowboy colors and stars and players' numbers and everything, and it was really cool. But I've never seen nothing like it until I moved here.
It's so crazy that like the difference between your football, not so much the difference between football, but the way it's supported. So the last game I went to was the Dallas Cowboys and Green Bay Packers, which is a big
Hmm.
game, big rivalry,
Sure, absolutely.
and all your fans are sat together. You're all, all the rows. And I was saying, because I was sat next to a Green Bay fan, and I was talking to him about what English soccer, as you would call it, is like.
Right.
And I was like, you are literally separated in the stadium because you will kill each other. It's incredible. Like it's so different.
Yeah. Well, you guys even it spills out into the streets and stuff sometimes,
Yeah,
right? Like after the game, and I don't know. I'm not.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I'm
mad.
not that big of a fan. I like to go and have a couple beers and eat some of the bad food and watch them hit each other real hard. But
Yeah,
at the end of the day, I don't. They get paid too much for me. And we've got a big controversy. I don't know. I don't know if you're getting that news over there, but a big controversy currently in Houston because I think it's our quarterback, Deshaun Watson or something. He's had like these 8 or 9 different women come after him with these allegations, and a local big time attorney has taken all the cases, and it's just started coming to light the past couple days, and it's probably going to be ugly for him. I don't know what's going to happen there.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and then it's a real bad time to be getting caught up with that kind of stuff with,
yeah.
with what's going on in the media and stuff.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's why I kind of I stay single. I date a couple of them, but I don't want to get real involved right now. I don't need all that. But hey, man, it's been great. Do you
Yeah.
have anything else for me, or
No,
where are
no,
we at?
no. I was going to say that was it. It was really lovely speaking to you. Thank you for sharing your experiences. And like I say, I think a lot of people think that it's the way men think or dads think over here is it's always a British way of thinking. But actually, it's not. All us as dads have the same experiences, just all over the place. And I think the more different stories that people hear, the better. Because actually, one just before I wrap up, one of the podcasts I did with a guy where he talked about not being able to connect with his daughter for the first 3 months. And it wasn't until like the third month where like a light bulb clicked and he was like, oh my God, I love this child. But for the first 3 months, he saw her as a burden and as a, he's taken away from his single playboy lifestyle. And now he's having to give all his money to this child. And on the back of that, I've had people message me and say, actually, do you know what? I actually thought I was alone in thinking that I couldn't connect with my kid. And I was at a point where I was thinking there's something wrong with me, but it's not. It's just that everybody, you will connect. It's just that sometimes it just takes a little bit longer. But I think with just dads being able to share their stories and their experiences and other people hear that, that's all that this is about, really.
Absolutely. Well, and dads aren't normally the nurturing one, right?
No.
And we obviously don't carry the baby, so our connection's different.
Yeah.
But once you realize, hey, I'm a dad now.
Yeah.
You don't go back from that, right?
No.
You become, unless you're just some POS, right? But a lot of guys, once they become dad, they're sold on it, and they're trying to better themselves and be a good person and a good provider, and just hope everything comes out well.
That's it. And there's no rule book. There is no rule book.
No, there's not.
Every kid is so different. Like one of the blogs I wrote, I talked about how, stop listening to what your parents, what your mates, what your uncles, what your cousins, ignore what they tell you, because everyone is so different. So stop putting pressure on yourself from other people and just go with it. And, I think you said it. The job ultimately is just to make your children's life better than your own, and that's it.
No, that's true. That's true. That's a great point.
Well, listen, I'm going to leave you. It's pretty late for me here, 10:30.
Yes, sir.
So I'm gonna get off. But yeah, like I say, brilliant speaking to you, and thanks for coming on.
No, I very much enjoyed it. You have a great weekend.
And you. Cheers, Joe.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.